Perhaps Trump's most controversial territorial acquisition proposal yet is what many believe to be an attempted annexation of Gaza. This, of course, comes off the heels of Trump talking about annexing Greenland, the Panama Canal, and even Canada. Gaza, however, raises concerns not even just from one side of the aisle, but from several different angles. For many on the American left, there are natural concerns with the procedure Trump wants to undertake to make Gaza annexable. This, of course, includes resettling the entire population elsewhere so the entire site can essentially be bulldozed. The proposal to rebuild the site as something of a cosmopolitan global hub also comes off to many as an essential ethnic cleansing or a wiping away of the culture that exists there. Now, for the American right, specifically the America First right, there is of course the obvious question of, why are we annexing a territory that's removed from us by an entire ocean? Why are we acquiring a territory in the Middle East of all places? Did Trump not campaign on ending the forever wars, of getting us out of these fields of global conflict and global interventionism? Wouldn't annexing a territory like Gaza just perpetuate that? Recently I put together a video discussing Trump's other proposed territorial acquisitions, Canada, Greenland, and the Panama Canal. And from a standpoint of America First policy, it makes sense. It's understandable why Trump would make these types of proposals. It is ultimately in the strategic interest of a more self-sufficient United States. But this territorial acquisition had me scratching my head. And granted, this is all still relatively new. Many of the details haven't really been made clear yet. But as more details come to light, it seems to me more and more that this is one of two things. Either it is a misunderstanding of Trump's actual intention, or it is meant to be radical language that's intended to be used as a negotiating strategy. Now, that being said, it's still perfectly possible that Trump is serious about the US acquiring Gaza. Today we'll be exploring all three of these possibilities and what the implications of each one are. What does Trump really want out of Gaza? Hello audience, Mr. Z here with another video for you. If you're new to the channel, welcome. We have videos like this every week where we talk about history and politics, so be sure to subscribe, leave us a comment about what you'd like to see next, and stay tuned for more. If you'd like to join the community, we do have a public Discord server linked in the description, along with a community-made subreddit loaded with memes, charts, maps, and more. And of course, if you'd like to help support the channel directly, consider becoming a channel member or donating to us on Patreon. Having dealt with censorship and demonetization in the past, especially when covering more sensitive topics, your support really goes a long way to keeping the channel going. All members do gain access to a separate members-only Discord server where you can speak with me directly. Now, let's get back to our regularly scheduled program. Let's first begin with the very possible scenario that there's just a misunderstanding about this, that Trump doesn't intend for the US to actually acquire Gaza as a perpetual territory, but rather is proposing that the US be a mediator or overseer of the territory because he doesn't trust Israel to manage it, nor does he trust any other power to oversee and rebuild it. Geopolitically, this makes sense. If Israel were to move into the territory and begin reconstruction, there would naturally be a ton of skepticism surrounding this. Many of the Arab states likely would not have faith in Israel to return the territory after it's been reconstructed. And frankly, given the politics in Israel, it's very possible that if they're given the territory to rebuild, they may simply annex it just for themselves. While the US has generally backed Israel in many Middle Eastern conflicts, it does have the ability to come in as an independent and neutral mediator. Now, some of the evidence for this possibility is that the way that Trump described this idea appears to have caught many off guard. Trump himself said that he had run this idea by several people and several leaders and that they had gotten behind it. The way he characterized it during his speech may not have been the same way he characterized it to them. Even Netanyahu, who was on the stage with him when he made the announcement, appeared surprised, pleasantly surprised, mind you, because Trump was speaking about relocating the Palestinians. Netanyahu, of course, not very fond of the Palestinians and probably eager to see them removed from that territory. Whether or not the relocation is permanent, however, I think that was misunderstood. Trump's White House press secretary Karoline Leavitt seemed to have suggested that the relocation is supposed to be temporary until the entire site can be rebuilt. She also clarified that the US's involvement would not be as hands-on as Trump had made it appear. That the US would not be sinking significant investment in the rebuilding process, that would come from other powers. as well as that the US was not committed to putting troops on the ground and having a perpetual presence in the region. The message that she was conveying seemed to suggest that the US's presence in the Middle East wasn't going to be significantly expanded by whatever the approach to Gaza is going to be. Of course, until all's said and done, this is still fairly speculative. If I were to take a guess what this possible outcome could be, it would be, as I said, American oversight of reconstruction, but opening up reconstruction and development of the territory to all sorts of foreign businesses. Likely at the exclusion of hostile or rival countries like Russia, China, and Iran. You could see investment and the construction of buildings in the area by German, Saudi, Egyptian, Japanese companies, you name it. And the idea would appear to be that the companies involved would be able to settle some workers in the area as well as the Palestinians being able to move back into Gaza proper. Now let's consider the other possibility. The idea that Trump is really just bluffing about all this. That Trump is making a bold claim that he knows is going to bring both sides to the negotiating table. Many of you have probably heard at some point that the two-state solution could happen, but the Palestinians keep rejecting it, or the two-state solution could happen, but the Israelis keep rejecting it. The reality is that both sides have rejected the two-state solution on multiple occasions. And most notably, in 1977, the Likud party declared that there could not be a Palestinian state, only an Israeli state. Current Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is a member of the Likud party and a staunch believer in this theory. Perhaps most troubling for the Palestinians is that in 2024, Israel's parliament declared that the establishment of a Palestinian state would pose an existential threat to Israel. So clearly the current Israeli position, at least that of the dominating government, is a rejection of the two-state solution. The Palestinians in turn have rejected the two-state solution as well, feeling that the Israelis are constantly encroaching on their territory, and the rivalry between the two has only intensified this division. Trump's bold position of saying, we are going to just move in and take all of Gaza for ourselves. While this is a radical and intimidating position to both the Palestinians and the Israelis. While the US is generally regarded as a friendly country by the Israelis, a relationship like that is liable to change, and the relationship, at least among the American population, has gradually been shifting. American views have been becoming more and more skeptical of Israel over time, and this is due to a number of factors, including changes in religious demographics. Having a territory held by a capricious United States might not be ideal for the Israelis. Moreover, with the territory like this being so far removed from the United States and being so isolated, it's just a given. It has to be assumed that it is going to be militarized to the teeth if it is genuinely going to be a US territory. Because it is so far removed, the US is going to have to give it all sorts of military equipment to protect itself. Think Kaliningrad on steroids. Moreover, even if the US remains friendly with Israel, a territory this close to Israeli territory, well, it opens the door for a lot of things, including surveillance and spying. One might say, well, why would the US spy on the Israelis? Well, for the same reason the Israelis spy on the US. Despite their alliance, Israel has had a bad reputation for spying on American citizens, American politicians, even spying on Trump during his first presidential term. In a scenario where the US were to acquire a territory right on Israel's border, it's not out of the question that Trump might seek to return the favor. On top of that, we have the economic factor. Trump is talking about turning Gaza into an economic engine. And his 2020 proposal for peace between Israel and the Palestinian territories would have seen Gaza, and extended Gaza even, develop domestic manufacturing, energy generation, all sorts of local industries. If the US could genuinely transform Gaza into a production hub and a shipping hub, this would siphon away revenue not just from Israel's trade partners, but likely Israeli citizens as well, who might begin buying up American products produced in Gaza. While some have framed Trump's proposal for what to do with Gaza as a caving to Israeli demands, depending on what is done with the territory and if it's done so with American interest in mind, it could certainly be turned into a very threatening force toward the Israelis as well. Why this proposal might finally be able to bring both parties to the table and agree to a compromise. finally accepting a two-state solution as opposed to America intervening and just taking up a swath of land for itself. If this were to go through, you would likely see Trump try to rehash his 2020 peace proposal with some minor modifications. And now, of course, the hypothetical, if Trump is serious. If Trump genuinely wants to annex Gaza and make it a perpetual part of the United States. I think this is the least likely outcome, but I won't rule it out as impossible. You have members of Trump's cabinet and inner circle, such as J.D. Vance, who says he can't picture a future in which the US is not involved in the Middle East in some capacity. Having an outpost in the Middle East that is a US territory would be a perfect way of doing that. Though that being said, it would sort of fly in the face of the America First and domestic focus agenda. It would be nearly as interventionist as if the US were to annex Taiwan or Ukraine. It's also not out of the realm of possibility that some people in Trump's circle might have floated the idea of creating a Christian equivalent to Israel out of Gaza. Something of a microstate where persecuted Christians across the Middle East or around the world could migrate to and find some security there. We can speculate that this could be what Trump meant when he said that people from all over the world would be living there. As I said before, if Trump is serious about this, we could expect the territory to be armed to the teeth, engaged in significant surveillance of neighboring states, including Israel, operating as a trade hub in the Mediterranean. But without a doubt, this territory is going to keep America somewhat overextended. Much of the Middle Eastern animosity directed toward the United States stems from America's support of Israel. Now, if the United States were to have an actual territory there, a territory that's all its own, not an ally that it's funding, but its own possession, well, that might take the animosity to a whole new level. The territory could be subject to significant terror attacks, which of course will provoke American interventions, which will create more forever wars. I can see some strategic advantage to holding this territory, but to what end, really? It's not a sustainable strategy if the United States truly wants to be self-sufficient and inwardly focused. Greenland is sensible, the Panama Canal is sensible, even Canada to a degree. But annexing Gaza? It feels like the proposals post-World War II when the US considered annexing Italy as the 51st state, or Germany as the 51st state, or Japan as the 51st state. It just doesn't make sense. But those are just my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments below, like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for more. Mr. Z, out.